Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing very well. We're going to get started. My name is Adel Shukuzadeh, and I am here to introduce Humphrey School Dean Eric Schwartz. So, as I was working on drafts of this introduction, I kept thinking about the challenges that face Minnesota, America, and the world. And I realized how fortunate we are to have leadership here at the school that are ready to tackle those challenges. And they've already started to ask the question, how can the Humphrey School continue to be a leader in advocating for sound public policies that advance our common goals and values? That's one of the priorities and purposes of the State of the School of Address today, to talk about those strategic priorities and how they've been shaped by the work we do here at the Humphrey School. We're even more fortunate to have Dean Eric Schwartz here and his incredible record of working tirelessly in government to advance the common good. Prior to his appointment here at the university, Dean Schwartz served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Population, Refugees, and Migration at the Department of State, which is the primary humanitarian position at the department. He also served at the United Nations as the UN Secretary General Deputy Special Envoy for Tsunami Recovery after the Asian tsunami of 2004, and at the White House as Special Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs during the Clinton administration. During my time here at the Humphrey, I've been fortunate to learn a lot from Dean Eric Schwartz, most importantly, how to be an effective leader. Dean Schwartz could have very easily come to the school and said, I'm the dean, I'm going to make some decisions, and that's how things are going to be done. But I have a feeling that Dean Schwartz realized that that isn't very appropriate for a public policy school, especially one named after Hubert Humphrey. During my time on the executive council, I've been the student rep, and I've watched firsthand and see firsthand how the dean leads through a collaborative process. He's always working to ensure that the voices of students, faculty, and staff are taken into consideration for any decision that he makes. And I think that collaborative leadership style is unfortunately too often overlooked and taken for granted. And so I wanted to thank Dean Schwartz for bringing that style to the Humphrey School, and I think it served us very well. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dean Eric Schwartz.
Thanks, Adele. Thank you so much. My clicker. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time to come this morning. I'm just going to do a little house work here, house cleaning, to make sure that everything is in the right place. I'll put this over here. Fall. Very good. Well, welcome, and thank you so much for, again, for taking the time to be here this morning. Before I begin my presentation, I want to say a few words inspired by the events of the past many weeks. In fact, by the past many months. And in particular, the advent of a new presidential administration. And before I even do that, let me first share comments I made to our students yesterday. I made along with our Associate Dean, Laura Bloomberg, and our Assistant Dean, Stephanie Haddad, about a very pressing issue for many of our students, the recent actions on immigrants and refugees. Because we know that the executive order on immigration and refugees that has been the subject of such controversy comes after harsh statements directed specifically and categorically at Muslims. And we deeply regret that many of our Muslim students, U.S. citizens and citizens of other countries, may be experiencing fear and uncertainty. We want to do everything we can do to be helpful and to stand in support of their rights and their well-being. And this will be a very important matter for us in the weeks and the months ahead. But more generally, I've been asked, what have I done? we got to do something about this situation up here. It's more generally, there's not a lot of room. Everything is very cluttered. I've got but more generally, I've been asked by many friends outside the Humphrey School, and I'm not. These aren't just words. I have been asked by many friends outside the Humphrey School about how our students have reacted to what, by any definition, have been transformational political developments over the past many months. I've also been asked about how our students have responded to rhetoric that has frankly questioned the principles, the relevance of principles that animate our School of Public Affairs. In fact, my own impression is that over the past many months, events that we've experienced have served to steel the determination of our students for careers in public service and in public life. And for me, that is not only gratifying, it's also critically important for the future well-being of our community here in Minnesota, in the nation, and around the world. So what are the principles that have been put under some stress? And why is it so important that we at the Humphrey School remain steadfast in our commitment to them and to imparting them effectively to our students and within our broader community? First, it seems to me, is the principle that while decisions in public life will, of course, be guided by values, they must be informed fundamentally by reason and evidence, and not by any toxic mixture of prejudice and ignorance. In short, if we do not win the battle to ensure that facts prevail over fear, we will consign ourselves, our children, and our children's children to a country which is poorer, in greater internal conflict, and at greater risk internationally. So I'm very thankful that here at the Humphrey School, we teach the tools of analysis, guided by scientific method, and I am convinced that those efforts are essential for our collective well-being and our collective survival. And in addition to teaching those tools, we must become better defenders of and advocates for such methods, and far more effective at engaging the general public with the fruits of our own efforts. Second, there are principles to which we are committed and which are related to political engagement and political leadership. That our public discourse must be civil and respectful. That enlightened leadership demands a commitment to both inclusion and collaboration. And that the demonization of groups within our society will, again, consign us, our children and our children's children, to greater conflict and instability. So I'm thankful that here at the Humphrey School, we not only seek to serve as a forum for civic and civil dialogue, but also as a training ground for collaborative and inclusive leadership. Third, there is the principle of support and fidelity to our democratic institutions. Our Constitution, but beyond our Constitution, a commitment to a political culture that values free and vigorous debate and political accountability, with a deep awareness, to paraphrase the Irish orator John Philpott Curran, that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. We must understand and I believe our students and our broader community do understand, that democracy and respect for basic rights is fragile, that we don't lose our democratic institutions in one fell swoop, but we lose them by the ultimate acceptance, the normalization of a succession of messages urging citizens and others just to be quiet. So eternal vigilance is hard work, but it is indeed the price to pay for liberty. And finally, there is the principle of civic engagement, the idea that while elected political leaders in government play a key and critical role in the lives and well-being of our nation's citizens, responsible governance involves an array of institutions, advocacy groups, nonprofits, philanthropic organizations, which not only partner with government, but also hold government accountable. So whatever one's political perspectives, whether you voted Republican or Democratic in the recent presidential election, I think it just would be unwise to pretend that these critical principles have not been subjected to challenges over the past many months. Indeed, these are challenges that have been recognized by political leaders in our community who are both Republican and Democratic. So it seems to me it is our collective task to steadfastly resist such challenges and to reaffirm the importance of the principles I've articulated and the vital roles that our faculty, our staff, and our students, our future public service professionals, will play in ensuring that these principles are continually vindicated. I think our school's namesake, Hubert Humphrey, wouldn't have it any other way. So now to the presentation, a chance to show how we're seeking to apply these principles day in and day out. Done with these papers, they go here. Papers to come here. So, and I'll put them under the cord so we're safe. So, State of the School Address. It is a pleasure every year for me to do this. It gives me the opportunity to showcase everything that is so vital and important about our school. And our school's mission to inspire, educate, and support innovative leaders to advance the common good in a diverse world. And this is a slide from last year, but I liked it so much that I kept it this year. Because I think there are many schools of public affairs, and each one has specific strengths. But I think the combination of strengths at the Humphrey School, I am convinced, make it the best place in the country to study public affairs. I've identified 10 factors, elements of our experience that I think, taken together, make this institution unique. The breadth of our programs, the quality of our programs, an extraordinary faculty committed to teaching, scholarship, and service. And since I don't have a faculty presentation slide today, I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about this. We have an extraordinary faculty who are at the top of each of their respective fields in terms of scholarship and research. But also, the vast majority of the faculty at the Humphrey School are deeply engaged in the process of policy making and policy implementation. I'm looking at one right now. And as importantly, take the craft of pedagogy, of teaching, take it so very seriously. There is a norm in this school about excellence in teaching. I know because I taught in the fall. And when those student evaluations of teaching came in, I was very nervous because, I And many of my students are sitting right there, so it was okay. I did fine. But that combination of a commitment and excellence in scholarship, engaged scholarship, service, and training is really remarkable at this institution. And I think it merited my taking a minute to talk about it. I think we are locally connected, firmly rooted in a vibrant community of Minneapolis, St. Paul, the region, and I think they use the term, where I grew up was upstate. I think here we say outstate. And that makes the school embedded in the community in a very important way. We are in one of the most innovative regions in the world, where innovation and experimentation in government and the non-governmental community is a critically important part of our experience, and it makes the academic environment, the learning environment here, very valuable. We are nationally and globally connected, according to Amy Klobuchar. Other than Greenwich, Connecticut, there is no community in the country that has more per capita Fortune 500 companies. I'm citing her because I don't have independent verification of that fact, but I believe her. But as importantly, we are a diverse community with a vibrant immigrant population, a vibrant refugee population, and connections to the rest of the world in serious and significant ways. And we have broad support from a remarkable group of stakeholders. We have a commitment to diversity and inclusion, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And we have a commitment to mobility. Mobility means combining excellence in education with opportunities for access. And I think the University of Minnesota generally, and the Humphrey School in particular, have an important mission in that regard, and we are deeply committed to that. And of course, we have the legacy of Hubert Humphrey. A commitment to the ideal that public life and public service is a noble profession, and that whatever your political perspectives, government has an important role in enhancing the quality of community and individual well-being. There may be other reasons why we're the best place in the country to study public affairs, but these are the 10 that I came up with. And we had a strategic review process, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But in that process, we identified, of these 10, I think 3 that we think were particularly significant. One of which is the breadth of the scope of our work and our teaching at the Humphrey School. We have 6 certificate programs, 7 degree programs, and it gives students who want to have careers in public life an enormous amount of opportunities for choice, but also enormous opportunities to learn from other disciplines. I think that is really important at this institution. Our location is I mentioned it, it's also critical. There's an element of our location which I didn't, kind of snuck up on me after I became dean, but I really think it's worth mentioning. And somehow I think about the analogy of the 3 bears. Goldilocks and the 3 bears, too hot, too cold, just right. And what I mean by that is we are in an environment that is vibrant and is as vibrant and as diverse as any community in the country. A dynamic urban environment, and with all of the challenges and problems confronted by major metropolitan areas anywhere in the world. At the same time, our environment is intimate enough, small enough, so that the Humphrey School of Public Affairs can play a significant and substantial role in our community, as we do. And there I would venture to say that if that is not a unique and very happy circumstance for our school, it is a very unusual one, and one I think that serves our institution extremely well. And of course our legacy, which I alluded to before, and I think many of you have heard me drone on about that many times in the past, but I do think it's a critical component of this institution. And the school has made great progress over the past 5 years. We have new degree and certificate programs, new degree programs, a brand new Masters of Human Rights program, which is thriving. Several of the students, I think, are in that row, right? Any of you? No? Oh, goodness. Okay. I'm confused because I taught this fall, and I had a slew of human rights students in the class. Many of these students here were in the class, but none of them are in the human rights program. So there you go. But in any event, a very successful Master of Human Rights program, a brand new, a relatively new a PhD program, both of which have served the school extremely well. We have outstanding new faculty members from institutions. We've been joined by faculty members from institutions in recent years, like the University of Chicago, Harvard University, Stanford, Princeton. I'm sure I'm leaving out some, but our new faculty members have really strengthened this institution in significant and substantial ways. We've expanded our international partnerships. We have strengthened support for state and local policymaking, which I'll talk about in a minute. Look at my watch. I think we're okay. We've had substantial increases in financial aid for our students. Over the past several years, we've been able to double our support for incoming students, our financial aid to incoming students. We have sustained efforts in diversity and inclusion. There's a lot more work that we have to do, but I'm going to talk about that as well in a moment. And we have increased engagement of undergraduates at the university. We are an important institution. We have so much to offer, and I think our faculty and our staff have appreciated that fact. And so we have, over the past several years, worked very hard to make this institution more accessible to undergraduates. So all this has had, I think, some impact on a report that was issued in March of last year by U.S. News and World Report, based on a survey of deans at public affairs schools around the country, in which our rankings jumped from number 16 to number 8 in the country. So there's a lot of satisfaction. I think you can make too much of rankings, but I also think that the judgment of peer institutions are not unimportant. So we all felt pretty good about the jump in the school's rankings over the past 4 years of the nearly 300 schools of public affairs in the country. We were very gratified, I think, by this jump in our rankings. The reaction in our community was rather muted. I suspect that was a staged picture. I'm not sure, but I think so. We have some of the folks who were in that picture here. When the announcement was made, our students were on a trip to Washington. So I think this is a product of our communications or development office. I'm not really sure. So over the past couple of years, we've involved ourselves in a number of strategic review processes. We felt that the school was in pretty good shape. And so we didn't know whether we didn't think we needed to do a full dress strategic plan, but we felt that a strategy document, a document that we were calling a strategy refresh, was very much justified, very merited. And so over the past couple of years, first through our development office, which surveyed stakeholders about the school, And then subsequent to that, a dedicated process under the guidance of our Associate Dean, Laura Bloomberg, involving our faculty, stakeholders who are connected to the school and staff. We kind of did a strategy review, which in many respects reaffirmed much of the work that we're already doing in the school, but I think has been a very valuable experience for us. It was completed about a week ago. If you'd like a copy of the document, we can make one available to you, but I'm going to kind of go through the essence of the results of that strategic positioning document right now and give you a sense of how we think about ourselves here at the Humphrey School. So we identified 4 themes that we thought really animate the work of our institution and really, in many respects, captures the work of really all of our faculty and staff, but in a way that provides a degree of focus. We thought that there is an emphasis, a thematic emphasis here on promoting hope and opportunity in a changing America and a changing world. There's a misprint there because it's actually promoting hope and opportunity and inclusion in a changing America and a changing world, as in the strategic plan. And whether it's the second is the supporting the institutions of democracy and civic life. The third is expanding our global reach and our impact. And finally, a theme that animates much of our work is the theme of strengthening the pipeline of talented and diverse leaders. So let me start with the promoting hope and opportunity in a changing America and in a changing world. And in the interest of being precise, I will confess that I'm going to be drawing from the words in the document and paraphrasing and in some cases drawing directly. So whether it's the imperative of early childhood development, an effective K-12 education, the work of our Human Capital Research Collaborative and the work of our partnership with the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, whether it's whether it's considering the social and economic impacts of housing and transportation policy, sustainably managing societal transitions relating to demography, infrastructure, technology, and environment. And that graphic there is a graphic of a Sustainable Cities project under the guidance of Professor Anu Ramaswamy. Whether it's promoting equitable access to social services, advancing the rights of women, ensuring that policies on work, pay, and occupational licensing promote access and employment, our school has a critical role to play in promoting hope and opportunity. Now, a foundation of hope and opportunity is the simple proposition, and if any of you were at the breakfast that we had, I think you heard Eric Jolly talk about this, the simple proposition that one's potential for success should not be influenced or determined by race, by gender identity, by sexual orientation, by ethnicity, by disability, or by economic status at birth. And I think that principle animates the work of much of our scholarship and engaged scholarship and service in this area. This includes the work of the Roy Wilkins Center for Human Relations and Social Justice. It includes the work of the Human Capital Research Collaborative, the Center for Women, Gender, and Public Policy, the Future Services Institute, as well as the work of many of our faculty operating in many areas at the school. So if this is what we do, what does our plan say about what we're going to do? And here, I won't read through it all in great detail, but I want to give you an indication that this plan is intentional and talks about it indicatively some of the initiatives that we're going to try to pursue in this area in the several years to come. And that includes the launching of a gender policy report, the strengthening of our centers that are dealing with these issues, the hosting of a world conference on health disparities, the hosting of a conference on cities, with U.S. cities on infrastructure and transition planning, sustaining and strengthening our work in human rights and sustainable development, augmenting our community partnerships right outside the door of this institution with immigrant communities, communities of color, through a variety of programs at the Humphrey School that are engaged on these issues, and to sustain and increase measures designed to promote diversity and inclusion at the Humphrey School. And I want to take a moment to talk about that. I'm trying to think whether I should take a moment now or later. Well, I'll do both. Let me say that this is diversity and inclusion and ensuring that the population of our school is reflective of the changing demographic character of our community is extremely important to the Humphrey School. And the work is informed very much by our diversity, strategic, and action plan. And we've made progress on these issues in recent years. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but there's much more to be done. So I will return to this theme shortly. The second issue for us, supporting the institutions of democracy and civic life. Institutions of public life, governments, legislatures, and civic and other non-governmental organizations play critical roles in the formulation, development, and implementation of policies and programs that dramatically impact the lives of citizens. Yet, public confidence in institutions of governance is, by most accounts, low. So we have a multifaceted role to play in supporting and strengthening the efforts of a broad array of individuals and institutions engaged in governance. First, we serve as a forum where legislators from different political parties can engage in civic and civil dialogue, for example, through the One Minnesota Conference, and where individuals and organizations of diverse perspectives can meet and debate important issues. Second, we promote more fair and effective policy implementation, building on efforts such as our Future Services Institute under the guidance of Professor Jody Sanford, our election administration program, and finally through an array of other programs, including those relating to human rights, in which we engage external stakeholders in co-producing knowledge and addressing complex public policy problems, and serve as a vital resource to our students and to the broader community. So if this is a second important thematic area, what more are we thinking about doing on these issues? We will be hosting the Bohe Institute for Legislative Leadership and Development, a regional organization of 11 state legislators from 11 states on policy development and implementation. I think beginning this summer will be the first. We are promoting a network of election administration. We're supporting faculty engagement with public institutions. We are working to provide additional incentives and resources to faculties for the purpose of dissemination of their work. We are continuing, of course, to hold public fora that provide stakeholders with varying perspectives the chance to come together. We are launching a new multimedia, we're calling it a Civios platform, really to translate the work that goes on here at the Humphrey School into the public and the policy environment far more effectively. We are augmenting our community partnerships and taking an array of actions in this area to deepen our commitment to the institutions of democracy and civic life. So let me go to the third theme, if I may, expanding our global reach and output. Today, there are fewer and fewer boundaries between domestic and global affairs, and this is especially true in the Twin Cities. With dozens of thriving nonprofits involved in global issues and a growing and vibrant community of immigrants, 17 Fortune 500 companies in our area, our communities are connected to the world outside our state. And in recent years, our scholars and our scholar practitioners have been involved in policy solutions relating to climate change, international development, international economic policy, humanitarian and refugee policy, nuclear nonproliferation, and human rights in the global south. So in addition, we are hosting scholars and practitioners through the Washington Mandela Fellowship for Young African Leaders, through our International Fellows Program. We are also providing opportunities for our students to engage in training and in research overseas. We're connecting with the Washington, D.C. policy community through our partnership with the Stimson Center, and we're enhancing our curricular offerings in the area of global policy. I want to talk a little bit about that. There's the Masters of Human Rights program, which we've just instituted, but also significant work under the guidance of our global policy faculty, the chair of which is Raghi Assad, sitting back up there. We've developed a global policy curriculum which I think provides our students with opportunities to think seriously about work in the policy environment in Washington or wherever else they might like to work, with specializations in U.S. foreign policy and international security, international development policy, and global human rights and humanitarianism. So what's next in this area? I think we need to sustain and support programs that are brand new but need to be strengthened. The Mandela Washington Fellowship, our newly expanded Humphrey International Fellows Program. It is a important legacy for the school, which we have, the size of which we have increased over the past year or so, where we bring fellows from the Global South to the Humphrey School in a national program, which is a memorial to our school's namesake. We will sustain and strengthen our partnership with the Stimson Center, and we will work to strengthen support and funding for our capstone and internship opportunities that are developed, that are directed toward global issues. The final area, the final theme I want to talk about is the theme of strengthening the pipeline of talented and diverse leaders. Our country and our world needs exceptional leaders who reflect the diversity that characterizes our changing communities. Our diversity strategic and action plan, produced in 2012, set the tone for a broad array of efforts designed to ensure, as I said before, that the student population at the Humphrey School increasingly reflects the demographic makeup of the populations in which our students will be working. We're expanding our efforts to recruit in communities of color. More than one half of our planned $20 million campaign is focused, through 2021, is focused on student scholarship support with a particular emphasis on promoting diversity. And let me also talk a little bit more on the issue of diversity and inclusion. It is an issue that is extremely important in this environment, at this school. We've made progress on these issues, but there's much more to go. Since I became dean, we've had 7 faculty searches. In 6 of those 7 searches, we've had finalist candidates of color. In 4 of those 7 searches, we've selected we've selected and they accepted faculty positions at the Humphrey School. We've made progress, but we started from a very low point, and there is so much more to do. 23% of our staff at the Humphrey School are from communities of color. That is an increase from recent years, and it's something that I think we feel encouraged by. But I think here again, there's much more work to be done. We've engaged the community outside our doors in the Cedar Riverside community. Somali students are part of our Policy Fellows program. We've had many immigrants as part of our master's program, both our traditional master's programs and our mid-career master's program. Some 18% of the class that entered in the fall of 16 were from communities of color. Those numbers are better or are higher than previous years, and I think we can take some satisfaction in that. But there is much more work to do in this community to promote the ideal of inclusion. And as I say, this is a work in progress. Our successful effort to serve as the National Secretariat for the Public Policy and International Affairs Program, a national pipeline program focused on diversity, as well as a decision to host a summer PPIA training institute at the Humphrey School, also reflects this commitment. But again, there's more to be done. Finally, on the issue of the pipeline of talented and diverse leaders, we have increased dramatically our course offerings to undergraduates at the university based on a strategy developed about 4 years ago, and with many of our peer institutions instituting undergraduate programs, and interest in our undergraduate offerings at an all-time high. Now really is the time for us to consider whether we should launch an undergraduate degree program at the Humphrey School. So what's next in this area? Well, as I said, determining the feasibility of an undergraduate program at the Humphrey School, to sustain and strengthen the PPIA Summer Institute, which are the first of which we'll be hosting this summer, to offer additional undergraduate courses with targeted global partners, and to undertake much more serious and sustained efforts at scholarship support designed. Our goal is to ensure that a majority of our students can receive scholarship support at the Humphrey School. So that's our strategic refresh, if you will. And the good news, I think, is that it largely reflects work that has been underway over the past many years at the school. We have aspirations which go beyond what we're doing now. But I think the process, to my mind, reaffirmed the direction that the school has been going in recent years. I also want to, normally I have a whole bunch of statistical slides in any Humphrey Assembly presentation, but our communications office has relieved me of that burden this year because we have a new product. I don't know if they're outside the door, but a Humphrey School Counts document, for which we are very proud, which has basic statistics relating to the school, and I'm going to just talk about a couple of few of them drawn from the Humphrey School Counts document. Our annual budget is on the order of $25 million, and that is all told. That includes the work of our centers, and as well as the core operations of the school. Our budget is basically in balance, give or take a couple of $100,000. And our reserve situation is pretty good. We've probably got about $1 million in reserves, which is, I don't know if the provost is still here. Is the provost still here? Yeah. So what, the central administration wants you to be healthy, because if a dean has no reserves, he or she is not going to be a dean very long. But if you have too many reserves, then you're not spending your money. So we think around $1 million is about right, and that's where we are. We've got an endowment of $70 million, which for a school of public affairs is a very healthy one. But given the history of this school, much of our endowment funds our current operations. So if all of this money could be used for student scholarships, we'd be in great shape. But based on our history and our funding, only a significant portion of this endowment is used for student scholarships, which is why it's so important that we raise more money in this area. The counts document has a number of statistics in it. I think the most significant in this document relate to the degree to which our faculty is involved in service and engagement outside the community, the increase in financial support for our students, as I referenced before. An important statistic which may not be self-evident to those of you outside the academy, 75% of our courses are delivered by tenured and tenure-track faculty. That is a high percentage, and it reflects the commitment of our faculty and our administration to the business of teaching. So I think overall, well, I was saying yesterday that in my 6 years as dean, I'm in my 6th year, I have never felt as confident, as encouraged, as excited about where the school is, where the Humphrey School is, and where it's going. This is a great institution, supported by an extraordinary group of stakeholders outside the institution, and a community within the institution that is almost exclusively focused on our mission. We are highly regarded by our peers, and I think we are doing the work that needs to be done in the community. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be significant and substantial challenges ahead. There will be. But I think this institution, as well as any public affairs institution in the country, is well positioned to address them and to continue to give our students enormous opportunities to succeed and to thrive. So before I finish, and I'm about to finish, I've gone way over. I don't know what my time limit was, so maybe I didn't go way over. I want to talk about one transition that I think is very significant, and use it as an opportunity to express my appreciation. Our Associate Dean, Laura Bloomberg, as I said last night, like a rat deserting a sinking ship. But we're not a sinking ship, and she's not a rat. My dear friend, my close collaborator, my partner in arms, and I think an individual who is as responsible for the successes we've had over the past 4 years as any individual at the Humphrey School. Laura Bloomberg has announced that she will be moving on. She won't be leaving the Humphrey School, thankfully, but leaving her position as Associate Dean in June. And so we are, I wanted to take this opportunity to do two things. First, to announce, to let you all know that, and to express my deep appreciation for Laura and her contributions, but also to announce that I've asked Laura to serve as this year's commencement speaker. Yeah, that can merit applause. And I did so knowing that the biggest smiles in the audience would be from the students. And it was. And I think that's what commencements are about. Now, Laura has traveled in pretty high circles over the course of her career, but I think that her real passion is for Minnesota, for the students here, and that is palpable in her work day in and day out. So, Laura, thank you. I think now, I need to check whether I'm taking questions and comments now. I am? Okay, good. We'll take questions and comments now from the audience. And with thanks to Deborah Levison, who's going to play that role. And Stacy Grimes. No questions? Comments? I think I will definitely hear from the advisory council later. I know that. They're here in the audience. There is one in the back.
Thank you, Dean. That was an excellent presentation. I really appreciate it. Ann Carroll, longtime alum. As you know, the issue of diversity and inclusion is central to my work as an alum and also my participation in the community and professionally. I am grateful for the tremendous progress that's been made. Could you spend a couple more minutes talking about how you intend going forward to accelerate, not just progress at the same pace, but to accelerate the progress of inclusion and really look within the state, within the region, within the country, to how we can put forth leadership that does reflect our broader community?
It's a hard question to answer because I think the way I look at it is we have to intensify measures that we know are successful and that make a difference. And I think we've recognized. I think we've recognized those measures, what they are. I think we've begun to try to take action in those areas self-consciously, and I think it just means as I said before, intensifying those measures. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I think the first thing is to recognize that we do live in a world in which there is structural inequality. I mean, whatever your political perspective, we just do, and that people are, individuals are, that success is too much affected by either immutable characteristics or characteristics that should not impact success, and that therefore, if you're dealing in the area of diversity and inclusion, you're not simply operating in an environment where philosophically you're saying, let's just let 100 flowers bloom. You have to deal with the reality of structural inequality and privilege. You have to, right? And of course, how you deal with that is a different issue. But if you don't recognize that fundamentally that is a challenge, that is part of the challenge, then you're not going to think about solutions that will seriously impact that challenge. And I think we have. I think that philosophical orientation to diversity and inclusion is reflected in our diversity strategic and action plan. It's reflected in the fact that we've invested a fair amount of resources to host a critical conversation series with Glenn Singleton, who talks about these issues and in a way that I think our faculty, our staff, and our students have deeply appreciated. So that's one thing, I think. We have to intensify those efforts. Secondly, I think that we have to develop guidelines and principles in terms of faculty recruitment, in terms of staff recruitment, in terms of student recruitment. And we are doing that. We have guidelines in all of those areas, which I think are models for the university. We have a new admissions director who has reformulated or has reformed, I don't know what word I would use, has modified our admissions procedures so that we can be more aware of opportunities to promote diversity and the inclusion of students of color. And then third, I think also important, is you need to have an administration that is very conscious of these issues continuously. So, for example, when I said 6 of our 7 faculty searches had persons of color as finalist candidates, and in 4 of those cases, we selected persons of color. In 2 of those cases, we selected a Hispanic and an African American candidate. In none of those cases would that have happened had not individual faculty and administrative personnel sort of gone outside, taken a look at the process and said, there's something not quite right here. We need to work harder at this. The guidelines weren't fully answering or addressing the issue. So you need to have faculty, staff, and administration who are prepared, without violating any procedural guidelines or rules, but to step outside the process and say, we need to take another look. And in each of those cases, that happened in one way or another. We need to find more resources to make it easier for people from historically underrepresented communities to come to the Humphrey School. We're working on that. We've done that. And we need to have the capacity to provide educational opportunities for students who have the capabilities to succeed and thrive here, but have been denied some of the training and therefore would not succeed unless they had a summer program like what we call Foundations for Success. So those are all the kinds of efforts we're engaged in. I think we're doing what we should be doing, but I think we need to sustain our energy and intensify our efforts. Yes?
Thank you, Dean Schwartz. I guess I have a comment more than a question.
Sure.
And it's been a pleasure to be a student here at the Humphrey for the past almost 2 years. And what I've seen during these 2 years is an encouragement and more concentration on involving more students in many of these projects and improvements that the Humphrey has been working on. And I guess the only thing I would say is continue encouraging and taking in the advice and the comments of all of the students at the Humphrey, because we do have a lot to offer, as you have taught us, and we have a lot of ideas of how to work on these improvements and plans that you have laid out.
Well, thank you for that. I hope that we have done that. I mean, part of the reason I teach is to have the opportunity to engage with students. I hope that you have seen a commitment on the part of administrators here and faculty to engage students in every way possible. By the way, have any of you read the op-ed piece in the Star Tribune urging that the new administration retain the U.S. ambassador to Norway? Anyone remember that piece? Well, there's the author right there who just asked the question. So I take your point, and I hope we do that. And if there are ways in which we need to do it better, then I want to know what those are.
Eric, there are a couple more. Nick and Michelle both have questions.
Sure.
Hey, Dean, Nick Swigert, 2013 alum. You
Hi,
alluded
Nick.
to this at the beginning about recent uptick in civic engagement, to put it nicely. What do you see the Humphrey's role in that this spring in terms of hosting events or kind of localized engagement, or do you not see a role in that?
I see it as a critical role. And let me talk about, since you asked the question, Nick, and I think Rob Clark, is Rob Clark here? So let me also just give you one, just because you asked the question, let me talk about one civic engagement exercise that we're going to be involved in this weekend, where we're going to be hosting the Army War College and the Minnesota National Guard in an international crisis negotiation exercise. And if you didn't get an invitation to the reception, let me know, and we'll. It's actually a good opportunity for me to say that engagement means engagement in a wide array of areas, right? It means engagement with a diverse group of stakeholders within our society, including and especially members of the military, where we can do much better. And that's why when I had the opportunity, you see I'm taking advantage of the fact that you asked the question. When we had, what's that? I know you do. But when we had the opportunity, when we were invited by the War College to host this international strategic negotiation exercise, I saw it as a fantastic opportunity to bring in the Minnesota National Guard. So their senior officials will be playing the role as mentors in this exercise, and the more junior officials, officers, will be engaged with our students as participants in the exercise. So we're very excited about that. But I think it reflects my comments reflect the fact that I think engagement has got to go across the widest array of areas. And in answer, Ann, to follow up your question, what we've established a brand new neighborhood engagement committee because we think we haven't done too badly in terms of engaging the community outside our doors. But I think there's much, much more we can do to make members of the Somali American community, the Hmong American community, and others feel like the school is their school. And so that's another example. We put together over the past several months, we think we have pretty good contacts with community leaders. But I asked my research assistants, who's sitting over there, Maddie Welter, did I get your last name right? To put together a list of about 150 community organizations and leaders that we might be missing. And we are engaging with those. And then we will continue to and accelerate the work that's already underway. Larry Jacobs and his Center for the Study of Politics and Governance has hosted the One Minnesota Conference. I don't know that he necessarily needed more work to do, but he, and I think it's really Kate Semino more than Larry, but in any event, they will be hosting this engagement effort with legislators from 11 Midwestern states, right? And what? And 4 provinces from Canada. So I think in terms of, but as I think about, those are examples of where we can do more, but I think we need to sustain, deepen, and strengthen our efforts at being a place where people with different political perspectives can sit down together and engage with one another. I think if we can't play that role, then I don't know what institutions in our community can. So I think the work of the Center for the Study of Politics and Governance has done extremely important work in that regard, and I think that's an area where I believe we need to deepen and strengthen our work. Sure, Shell and Maureen.
First of all, I'd like to reflect on the fact that you single out the student who contributed to the Star and Tribune, because she is very much illustrative of the new face of the Humphrey School as a Ukrainian-born Norwegian, supported by a scholarship from the Norwegian Codfish Club.
The Norwegian Codfish. I forgot all about the Norwegian Codfish Club.
And who's locked and loaded as a resident of Minnesota, engaging in civic affairs here. And I'd like to I'd like to congratulate Anna Kvinge for the story that she wrote. Secondly, I'd like to take advantage of the fact that we honored Dr. Eric Jolly this morning as one of the finest representatives of Native Americans and their educational accomplishments, but also taking that as an opportunity to point out that Native Americans in this region of the country and others continue to be a badly underserved population. So I'd like to follow up on what you said about communities of colors and so forth, but I think we could do so much more to assist our friends both on and off the reservation in having them enjoy opportunities at the Humphrey School and then become leaders in our communities.
Oh, this is an area, thank you, Shell, for that. This is an area that has been a source of interest and concern for me for many years. And, and I think that there are opportunities in this area that we're not taking advantage of. Morris, I think in particular about Morris, the University of Minnesota at Morris, which has a statutory or a charter obligation to serve the American Indian community. And we have had lots of conversations about ways that we can enhance our cooperation with Morris, but we need to move beyond those conversations. With that in mind, we made a decision, I guess about a year ago, to make a considerable contribution support from the Dean's discretionary fund to support the work of Guillermo Navarez, who, along with Kathy Quick, a member of our faculty here, have done a lot of work in the American Indian community. And Guillermo has been charged with developing plans and ideas to deepen and strengthen our engagement with the American Indian community.
Thank you, Dean Schwartz. Maureen Reed, a member of the community.
Hi,
My
Maureen.
question has to do with public fear. And I'm wondering, what is the role of a School of Public Affairs, specifically the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, in explicitly neutralizing the public's fear that is so corrosive to our democracy and democratic institutions?
Well, I mean, I think, I guess I can answer that question on a lot of levels. I think we're a nonpartisan institution, but we're not a value-free institution. And so when there are times that we as an institution can speak out and speak up for universal principles and values, we do that. And we try to do that very strongly. And I think that can be a source of comfort for our students and for our community. I think it can. But we must do it in a way that is not, that is not and is not perceived as partisan engagement in politics. But we do it, and I think my opening comments today reflected the fact that this is something we think about and try to communicate to our community and our students in particular. Second, we can serve as a source of information, because information always can mitigate a fear. The more information people have. And so in the context of the current concerns that many of our international students have, I think we can't solve all their problems. And some of their fears may be justified with respect to their status in this country. But I think we can provide as much information and advice as their university and as their supporters as possible, and that's what we're doing, and that's what the university is doing. And then I think all of us have obligations to speak out, to speak in our personal capacities on issues of the day, as I do, and even if I'm not speaking as the dean, if I speak in my personal capacity on issues of the day, our students in our community hear it, and I think that's also important. And I and others. I think my time is up. So, but we're not done with the program. So I want to turn the program over, despite the fact that she's decided to leave the Humphrey School, or at least to leave the dean's office at the Humphrey School. I want to turn the program over to Laura Bloomberg. I'll give you a hug.
In a moment, I get the pleasure of announcing this year's Outstanding Service Awards. But before I do that, I want to share with you a thought I've been reflecting on for the past hour or so. If this school has a moral and ethical and social justice compass that directs us, then I firmly believe in my core that our dean is the sure foot of that compass. He's what grounds us. And I'm not just saying that because he said nice things about me. I'm saying that because it's true. And every day I have the opportunity to work very closely with this man who, as a dean, is challenged by competing priorities and oftentimes is asked to do things quickly and make decisions that call him to balance effectiveness with efficacy, with efficiency, and with timeliness, and with no shortage of advice from a lot of really smart people around him. And that requires a level of compromise and open-mindedness that is hard sometimes. I watch it. It's hard. And still, in the time I have known Eric, I have never once, not once, seen him compromise on his fundamental values about what is right and true and good in the world and in this school. And I think we owe him a debt of gratitude. And I really mean that. So now, the Outstanding Service Awards. Every day in this school, as Eric alluded to in some of his talks, we welcome hundreds of students into dozens of classes in person and online, and into dozens of internships around the community and around the world. We manage interdisciplinary and international research teams that are doing millions of dollars worth of research. We are sending our faculty and our students and our research staff to all parts of the globe, Colombia, Egypt, Denmark, Australia. Those are places where we have faculty right now that I'm aware of. And we are sharing literally hundreds of Humphrey-designed multimedia materials with our peer institutions so that they too can use what we've learned here about teaching and learning and in the integration of research, engagement, and teaching. So we're in a lot of places, doing a lot of things, and we're pretty darn good at it. But I can tell you that there is not a single successful student or successful research initiative that is doing it alone. Around each one of those success stories, and I mean around, I don't mean behind, I mean around each one of those success stories is wrapped a team of really dedicated and talented and passionate staff members who show up at this school and bring it every day, and we are so fortunate for that. When you choose to work at the Humphrey School, you're choosing a school that's impatient, sometimes scrappy, motivated, demanding. We try to move fast. It can be exhausting. It can be hard work. And the staff people who come here every day have chosen to be in that kind of environment, and collectively we're advancing the common good in a diverse and changing world. So before I announce this year's Outstanding Service Award winners, I'd invite all of the staff of the Humphrey School who are here today to please stand so we can recognize you. We simply would not be a top 10 school without this amazing crew of folks. So it was not easy to identify 3 outstanding awardees, but the people I'm about to announce were all nominated by multiple people within the school to accept the honor for this year. The first person that I'd like to recognize is Joel Mixon, Senior Academic Advisor, and somebody who every student in the school knows, every faculty member knows, and many of us turn to for advice on a regular basis. The nominees, or the nominators for Joel had this to say about him, and mine is a little bit longer, I think, than what appears on the screen. Joel is generous in using his extensive expertise to help others, whether it is students planning their course schedules or staff planning school-wide initiatives. He has provided many of us with vital historical data, offered a guide to interpersonal relationships, broadened our thinking about diversity and social justice, and created a place where people can go when they need reassurance and support. Quite simply, Joel is someone you can count on. And as somebody who considers Joel a personal friend, I can attest to all of those things as being very true. Please join me in congratulating Joel Mixon. Our next award winner is somebody who, when I came to the Humphrey School many years ago now, I believe in 2006, one of the biggest, first, most important pieces of advice I got was, you need to get to know Elaine Piaski. It was a really smart piece of advice, too. Elaine is our grants and contracts professional. She works in our financial services office. And although she has a lot of official titles, certified approver, all kinds of things, let me just say she is the go-to person for getting a grant or a contract out the door that is accurate, timely, meets all of the university requirements, and perhaps most importantly, meets all the federal government or any funder requirements. She knows what she's doing, and she does it beautifully. This is what one of the nominators had to say about Elaine Piaski, and again, I can completely attest to the fact that it is all true. Humphrey School faculty annually submit dozens of grant proposals that have the potential to bring in millions of dollars to the school. Elaine is the go-to person on grant submission details, and she provides excellent guidance. And then I will just have to tell you, this next line is mine. Having worked with grant administrators in several colleges and university departments, I don't know of a single person I would rather go to for guidance and advice on grant submissions. She is simply the best. Please join me in recognizing Elaine Piaski. This is what we call the Walk of Honor, Elaine. So well deserved. And finally, Susan Beaker, who has not been with us for many years. Well, it's been a few years now, but in a very short amount of time, Susan has made herself invaluable to our curriculum and instruction, teaching and learning team. She provides course support and so much more to the faculty who are working with our students every day. Her attention to detail and her commitment. When I talk with Susan, it's clear to me that she believes deeply that the teaching mission of this school is her mission, and I love that about Susan. Here's what one of the nominators had to say about Susan Beaker. Susan is incredibly diligent and responsive, as well as being a true joy to work with. I have to tell you, I cut out the next part, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I thought it was setting a bad example, but this nominator also talked about how Susan responds to emails and questions on weekends, late at night. Not that you all have to do that, but Susan does. She goes above and beyond, and she deserves huge recognition for her very hard work to support the kind of high-quality course development that keeps the school running in a manner that creates the kind of positive student experience we all want to achieve. Please join me in recognizing Susan Beaker. And that concludes our festivities this morning. I think there's nothing better than food to build community, and I understand we've got food in the atrium, and you are all welcomed and encouraged to stay, except, no feeding of members of the advisory council, apparently. No, the members of the advisory council will reconvene in our usual space for the meeting, and we will have nourishment there. The rest of you can all have fun in the atrium. Thank you so much for coming.